Well, it is 7:01 on the East Coast, so it is that time to start our Spirit and Truth webinar tonight with a really special guest. And if you are just signing in, welcome. Please be sure and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you have a question for our special guest tonight that relates to what we're talking about as we kind of have this conversation about worship tonight, feel free to ask us that question, post it in the comments, and if we get a chance, we'll really try to get to it. We do want to be intentional about being interactive with you guys as much as we can be. So our special guest tonight is Kim Walker-Smith. Kim, thanks for being with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to chat with you tonight. I know a lot of people have been really blessed by your music, by your worship leading, by your songs, and they're going to be excited to hear from you tonight. I do want to say really quick as we get started to all you guys, if you missed last month's Spirit and Truth webinar with Josh Baldwin, you can watch it on our YouTube channel. In fact, you can watch all four. We've done 4 of these webinars so far with different guests. We've had Jay Thomas, Ray Hughes, Laura Hackett Park, and they've all been so good. You can watch all of them on the Access Worship International YouTube channel. So be sure and check that out. And while you're there, you know the drill. While you're there, subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so that lets YouTube know that you want to know when we release new content. Our next Spirit and Truth webinar is going to be Tuesday night, July the 2nd at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for now, our next guest will remain a mystery. You don't get to know that yet, but we'll let you know soon. And it's going to be really good. You don't want to miss any of these. We're so excited about all our guests. But enough of all that stuff. Let's start talking to you, Kim. Yeah, it's good to be with you. Can I just read your bio? Would that be awkward?
Yeah, no, it's not awkward, but yes, go ahead.
Okay, so because it always it's like awkward for me when people do this, and then I hear them read my bio, and I'm like, I should have updated that. Like,
I always wonder when someone says, "I have your bio, can I read it?" I'm always like thinking, like, did they get that online somewhere, or did one of my people send that? I always wonder the same thing. Like, is it updated? I don't know. Who knows? I'm excited what this is going to say. Let's find out.
this one should be up to date. It's from Jesus Culture.
Yeah.
So this Hopefully. Is official. All right. Kim Walker-Smith is a singer-songwriter, worship leader, and founding member of Jesus Culture, a global worship movement. For over 15 years, she has played a major role in influencing worshipers and worship teams around the world towards a passionate pursuit of Jesus. Her heart is to see people transformed by experiencing God's love, and for this generation to see themselves the way God sees them. Today, Kim lives just outside of Sacramento. That's still true. With her husband, Skyler, their 2 boys, Wyatt and Bear, and daughter, Maisie. When she's not leading worship at her church, Jesus Culture, she travels internationally to lead others into genuine encounters with Jesus. Awesome. So Kim, why don't you, if you don't mind, would you just maybe share as we get started a little bit about your story, like your background and like how you met the Lord, and maybe a little bit about how you got started in worship and music, stuff like that.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was like muting. Well, I was saying earlier we have construction going on at our house right now, and all the workers are just leaving. So there's all this like car noise and talking. They're all Christian. It's awesome. So they all were praying for each other before they left and saying goodbye. It's like sweet.
Oh wow.
Like, band of brothers here working on the house. It's great.
Wow.
Anyway, okay, so yeah, a little bit of my my background and my history. So on the music side of things, I grew up with a very musical family, and everyone sings. Everyone plays piano. I don't play an instrument. I can sit at a piano and I can hear if it sounds like a chord or not, but couldn't tell you what it is. It was very common in my family to be singing, to be musical. But singing was never something that I really took seriously or thought was anything special. Honestly, I thought, well, lots of people can sing. It's just something that's there. I didn't really think much of it.
Yeah.
I grew up doing musical theater, which was something I really loved and enjoyed. And before I say anything about my family, I'll just say in high school, my freshman year, I got kicked out of choir, and I was never allowed back in. So I didn't get to do any singing in high school outside of when I got to do like sing the anthem for sporting events or things like that. And then my first year of college, I auditioned for the worship team as a background singer, and I didn't make the team. Mm-hmm. So all that to say that what I thought I'd be doing with my life or planned, but this is great. My family history, my parents divorced when I was 4. Is my connection coming through okay? Am I still good?
You froze for like about 2 seconds and then.
Okay. Yeah, so. This little thing just popped up and it's like, your connection's unstable. Okay. I think we're good now. Okay. So my parents divorced when I was 4, and I had 3 stepfathers after that. 2 of those stepfathers were not healthy people and put us through a lot. And as a result, I grew up with really a lot of pain and anger and instability in the home, and a lot of uncertainty about God and church and everything else. Mm-hmm. And that was something that was not a real consistent part of my life until my mom married my 3rd stepdad, who was a really solid Christian who got us going to church on a regular basis. And suddenly church went from being kind of this thing that maybe happened every now and then to being something that was very much a part of our lives every Sunday. Wednesday night youth group and church camps and, the church potlucks or, all the church things.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I, at this point, I'm in high school and I'm carrying a lot of anger and a lot of pain from everything I'd walked through in my childhood. And I just, in all that anger and all that pain and not really seeing a way out, my senior year, I tried to end my life and it didn't work. And when I woke up, I ended up giving my life to Jesus in that moment. I think I was kind of shocked that I woke up and it didn't work. And the reality of God and God in my life became real in that moment. And I said, I will give my life to you, but you have to help me. You have to set me free. I recognized that I was in a lot of bondage to the things of the past and everything I'd walked through. And that I didn't realize how much of a journey that would begin for me. And saying those words to God, you've got to set me free, that really set me on a journey of inner healing. The best way and probably the more condensed way I can say it is just waiting for God to lead me in every step. But this whole process that spanned a few years of going through inner healing, counseling, and just kind of being rewired from the inside out and really allowing God to transform my life completely. And out of that is where Kim, the worship leader, was born, out of that transformation. As I said, this isn't what I imagined I would be doing with my life or planning, but this is just where I ended up. And it's funny, one of my favorite verses is in Proverbs. It says, man makes his plans, but the Lord aligns his steps. And I kind of feel like in the whole journey of just falling in love with Jesus, I just set my eyes on him and just kind of made my focus, I just want Jesus. I'm just moving towards Jesus. And in my pursuit of him, he just led me into that and began just opening doors. It was kind of funny. I got asked one time in a Q&A, it was kind of like how did you become a worship leader, or is this where you thought you'd end up, or kind of a question like that. And I was laughing and thinking, there are still days when I open my eyes and look around and go, how did I get here? how am I doing this? But it was just the pursuit of Jesus, and then allowing him to lead me in that and draw, just really draw the worship out of me in his time, in his perfect way.
Yeah. Wow, that is amazing. I mean, just like the transformational work that the Lord does in all of us that prepares us for the call that he has on our lives. And there's some of these themes that you just brought up, I definitely want to talk more about as we move along, for sure, because we're going to talk about your book later and stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, can you tell us real quick, tell us about your family?
Yeah. Okay. So, 3 kids, and they're 5, 4, and Maisie just turned 2. And I'm a homeschool mom. So I just started homeschooling my oldest this last year. So our last day of school was 2 days ago. And I actually just have to say that I'm so proud of myself that I survived my first year of homeschool. When we decided to do this, I thought, what am I thinking? I can't do this. I was so terrified and just thought, the weight of responsibility of educating my children, this cannot fall upon me. I can't do this. But we did it. We made it. It was great. And next year, I'll have 2 of them. My other son will be joining next year. I'll be doing it again. So anyway, my kids travel with me pretty much everywhere I go. The only time I don't really take them these days is if it's a really short trip. But they all have been traveling since they were 2 months old, every single one of them. Oh, wow. And they're good little travelers. And my boys are just starting to understand what Mama does. My oldest son says, "Mama, are you going to go help people find Jesus?" And I say, "Yep, that's what we're doing." And they love worship and music, and they love traveling. They love meeting new people. So that's kind of we live on a little farm. They have some farm animals, and when we're not traveling, they're running around barefoot and getting dirty and being kids.
Do they take care of the chickens? Do they help take care of the chickens and stuff?
They do. And we have some goats and 1 sheep that they named Donut. And my daughter is obsessed with them. And every now and then, my husband will go out in the field with all of them, and he'll let them take turns riding one of the goats, which they love. And he has to kind of walk along and hold them, but they just think it's the greatest thing. It's awesome.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool. Well, so let me say this. I know a lot of people have joined since we got started a few minutes ago. So if you're just joining us, welcome. Please post in the comments where you're watching from, and definitely share this to your Facebook page, because we want as many people as possible to be able to participate and hear what Kim has to say tonight. So we're going to dive a little deeper now with you, Kim. And I'd like for you to talk to us, because so can I just I want to go back in time a little bit, because I remember when I first met you, actually. Yep. I went to Morning Star School of Ministry in 2001 and 2. And that's where I met Molly Williams, who's a friend of you and me. And then I finished up with school, and I moved here to Jacksonville and came on staff at New Life Christian Fellowship. And I don't remember what year this was exactly. I just remember Molly had been out to Redding. She was helping with the worship school at Redding, at Bethel, which I think was it like a 4 or 6 week long school or something? The school of worship, and Don Potter, I think, was out there that year. So she was out there helping. And when she got back, I remember talking to her on the phone, and she was like, "Kalani, there's this girl out there." She started talking about you and saying how gifted you were and all this stuff. And I think she was hatching a plan of getting you to come to Charlotte for a while, right? When was that? Do you remember?
I was trying to remember that, actually. And I just had to writing my book, I had to sort out the timelines and figure out the years of everything. Yeah. And for the life of me, I can't keep it all straight. It was around 2000, I think 4 or 5, somewhere right in there.
That sounds,
maybe 2004.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So, Yeah, I was working on staff at Bethel, and our school of worship that year, I wanted to like be a student in this school. So I was, and I had just kind of started leading and was terrified on stage and terrified of leading and had messed up a lot. The very first time I ever led a song, I completely messed up in the middle of the song on a Sunday morning, and I burst into tears and I just ran off the stage. I just left everyone in the middle of the song still playing and just ran off the stage, just abandoned them all because I was so terrified. Swore I'd never do it again, but of course I did. But yeah, I know it's kind of funny looking back at that now. That was so scary. But anyways, I was just really, I kept saying to people, I feel like there's something in me that needs to come out, and it's not coming out. Like I'm locked up, and there's an expression that needs to come out of me, and I don't know what it is. I don't have the words for it. I don't know. But it needs to come out. And they had brought Molly in to help like teach singing and things like that. And Molly did this class, and I was like a vocal class, and I was in there. And towards the end, she started talking about spontaneous and prophetic worship. And I was just sitting there like a sponge, just soaking it all up. And I said, to her, I sat until every person left. And when everyone left, Molly's just sitting there just looking at me, and I'm just looking at her. And I said, I have a lot of questions. And she just laughed, and we ended up going out to lunch. And I think I got, some of my questions out then. Probably the rest came out over the span of time in friendship with Molly. But I always say everything I learned about worship, I learned from Molly. She ended up helping me get out there, and I came out for a conference, but then ended up coming back out later and living there for a bit. Yeah. And, I came back a different person, and everyone would always say, Kim, what happened to you? You left and then you came back and you're like not the same person. Like you were over here and now suddenly you're way over here. Wow. And I could never really put into words exactly what happened, except just to say whatever it was that I felt locked up in, I felt like I found that key and I got opened up. I found a way to let that expression out. Molly would always say to me that I need to get some backbone. And she would really push me out there, and it was good. I needed that. Everyone should have the friend that pushes them and challenges them, tells them to get some backbone. Come on.
Right. Exactly. So that's kind of part of the answer to the question I was going to ask you. But let's talk a little bit about spontaneous worship, prophetic worship, because you really do engage in that and flow in that a lot. Can you share? So that was around the time that you started that unlocked in you, and you started to gain understanding, started to operate in that, right?
Yeah. So a few things that I'll say about that. First of all, for me personally, I kind of separate the two a little bit in my head. For me, there's a difference between spontaneous worship and prophetic worship. Yeah. Spontaneous worship is the overflow of that, just that well inside of you. I like to think of it as like there is a well in there, and that well should be filled up. And in my mind, filled up means that it's overflowing, that there's a constant pouring in, and so there's a constant pouring out. Yes. And my side note with this for a moment, one of the questions I'll get asked the most is, how can I grow as a worship leader? Or like young people will say, I want to do what you're doing when I grow up. What do I got to do? And I'll always say, well, the first most important thing you need to do is grow your relationship with God. Yeah. And I feel like everyone's kind of like, I feel like there may be wanting kind of this like step-by-step process. Like, give me, step 1, step 2 of how I become this. And I don't think that's really the answer. I think the answer is you allow God to grow you, and that relationship with him truly is the key to all of that and the key to the growth. And it's hard to lead people into an encounter with God if you yourself don't know how to do that. It's hard to lead people in freedom if you are not free. It's hard to lead people in spontaneous worship and help getting something out of them if you don't walk in that yourself.
Yeah.
So that relationship is so key. So for me, the spontaneous worship is just that there's a constant flowing into my life and my heart, that well inside of me. So there's a constant flowing out. So spontaneous worship is easy. It's just me opening up my mouth and just pouring out my love to Jesus. It's just singing out what's in my heart towards him and what I feel towards him and what I feel in the moment when I sense him, when I sense his presence. The prophetic worship is that moment when something kind of bubbles up from deep down inside, and when it comes out in that spontaneous flow, for lack of better words, I feel the wind on it, like God's breathing on that. You feel the anointing. I get that tingly goosebumps kind of feeling on my arms and the back of my neck. And I recognize that's it. That's whatever it is that God wants to do in this moment. There's a grace for us to come into something right now. The prophetic anointing, that prophetic moment. That's the moment, like, so something's been opened up and we get to step into something in that moment with God, what he wants to do, whether it's, setting people free or healing or whatever it is. And I don't think our times of worship, I think it's interactive with God. It's not just the singing songs or running through motions. It's interactive. God wants to interact with us. There's transformation that I think needs to happen. How can we go into the presence of God and remain the same way? So there's going to be change. There's going to be fruit. There's going to be something that is going to happen in that time. Yeah. And I think that prophetic worship is that the anointing and the grace for whatever that is in that moment.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's like, one of the ways that I've explained it to people, like what you just said about like worship is supposed to be interactive, like God's interacting with us, is like kind of like the other half of the conversation. So many times we enter into worship or a time of corporate worship and we sing the songs, and it's like if you called up your best friend and you did all the talking and then just immediately hung up. It's like, no, he has things that he wants to say to us, things he wants to do, and it's allowing space for the other half of the conversation to take place. And I like what you said too about kind of clarifying some differences between spontaneous worship and prophetic worship, because they are not really the same. But the spontaneous is usually a lot of times. So the prophetic is the vehicle that it rides on is that spontaneous flow, right? So one of the ways that if you want to be used as a vessel, if you want to be used in prophetic worship to release, the song of the Lord or what he said, you've got to start exercising those spontaneous muscles and be right, like step out, like you talked about, like somebody push out, step out into those uncharted places, learn how to release your heart to the Lord, how to sing the word spontaneously. There's different ways that you can exercise those muscles, right? So that
totally. Yeah, and I think it's going to be much easier if you are filled up and that there is that constant pouring into that well inside of you. It's easy to let that flow out, but there is. It does take practice, right? Because if you've ever heard anyone when they're first work up the courage to step out in this spontaneous worship and they just sing everything in one note, just like this, because there is like the technical side of like getting comfortable with singing something spontaneously and randomly over a chord progression and then making sure that the band is like there with you. I mean, I've definitely had those moments that I go into something spontaneous and the band is like, oh, a free-for-all, and everyone just goes into their own thing, and I'm like, no, stay on the same chords. Don't stop. Just stay on those chords. So there is a little bit of a technical side of it and getting comfortable with that and getting used to that. But I think practice is the key. Like, you can't really get comfortable with it and familiar with it until you just step out and just be doing it, just practicing.
Exactly. And I think, and when you do that regularly and kind of exercise those muscles and stay filled up, then you have something to pour out. But also, because when we're leading worship, there's several things going on at the same time, depending on what you do. Like I lead from an instrument, so I'm playing an instrument, I'm singing, I'm leading a congregation, I'm directing a band to some degree. And so there's a lot of tasks, but in the midst of all that, I'm trying to listen to the Holy Spirit.
Right. So I've always said, worship leaders have to be expert multitaskers.
Exactly. So it's like the more you know your instrument, the more you know the song that you're doing, the more certain things that don't require a lot of paying attention so much, then you can give more focus towards, all right, I'm listening. What are you doing, Lord? What are you, right? Because there's it's like learning to listen and follow the leadership of the Holy Spirit while you're leading people in worship, something that you grow in. I don't know if you have is there anything that you did or ways that you learned to do that?
Well, I'm not playing an instrument, so there's one advantage I have. I'm not having to focus on that. I do think that if you are a worship leader who plays an instrument, that it's super important to practice and get really good on that. Just what you just said, so you don't have to think about it so much. So it feels natural to play the song. I do think, we have like new songs that we introduce or songs that we've written that we're introducing, and we're still learning the lyrics and things like that. But I do think that it's helpful if you memorize your lyrics. Yeah. And that's just a personal preference, but I just think it's helpful if you memorize it because it's another thing that you're not having to put so much effort into thinking about. Yeah. The other thing is, I know, so many churches, we have this at our church. It's very common in churches nowadays to have, I've heard so many names for it, but most common is probably confidence monitor, which I think is hilarious. Like, don't lose your confidence, worship leader. Here's your words. I just think it's funny calling it confidence monitor. like this monitor is going to give you confidence. You know what? It's only giving me confidence if the person on the other end is actually ahead of me. Exactly. That's the only time it gives me confidence. But even for that, it's just memorize your songs. But the only hang up I will say with those is that I have seen many worship leaders, you're watching them on camera, if you ever go back and watch live stream or whatever, and they're just singing and staring intently at a screen in the back. And I think they don't realize how long they're actually staring at that screen. And they don't seem engaged at all in what is happening because they are just staring at words on a screen. And I don't think it's intentional. I think we just don't realize. So I've been trying to encourage worship leaders, hey, go back and see what you look like when you're leading. Do you look engaged? Are you engaged? It looks funny if they're just, staring the whole time, singing something. Anyway, so that's a side note about all of that. But I just think it's helpful if no one expects perfection. We're gonna stumble over lyrics from time to time. I've done it a million times, and it's not always easy to memorize. That's a lot of songs, But I think some effort into that and knowing the lyrics, or at least the effort into getting comfortable enough to where you're not staring at the screen the whole time.
Right. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of confidence monitors and things that are becoming more common in churches, multi-tracks. There's more and more churches are using them, and it's great. There's a lot of good, positive things that come from that. Yeah. But that can, for someone, because one of my friends asked me this, a worship leader friend of mine was asking me this question to ask you. So I'll throw it out there. When it comes to really desiring to flow, to be able to flow more spontaneously and to include that, to help the congregation flow in worship. There's a couple things that can be hindrances to that. One is time itself, how much time you actually have. Some churches obviously have multiple services, and so things need to move a little bit more concisely or whatever. So there's that. And then there's also, songs, if they're running multi-tracks, unless you've got a real fancy setup where you can on the fly change things, you're kind of on the train, you're on this track that you have to stay with. So would you have any words of advice or encouragement for someone who's in a situation like that? How can they still bring in some, you know what I'm saying? Like still be able to flow some, or what would you do? What would you?
Yeah. So, the person who runs the tracks for us is our keyboard player. And, I probably, expect a lot more, out of them than what is maybe normal all the time. So because I will be very spontaneous and kind of go off the grid. We have a few options, you know. They will either, they do have the gear and the know-how to where, if suddenly I kind of go off the grid on a chorus, they'll just start, I don't know exactly what they do, but pushing buttons to loop the chorus. Yeah. So it just keeps going and everyone stays right there until I move on to the next thing or whatever it is, you know, and give a signal for wherever I'm going. Yeah. The other thing that we will do is, if they know that like, there's certain songs, like we have some songs where maybe the bridge, so it's, you know, towards the end of the song is my favorite chord progression to kind of get in a flow on. Like the chorus is a beautiful chorus, but the actual chord progression is not really a great chord progression to kind of get into a flow singing with. Right. So if they know that that's coming on the bridge, they know that when they get to the bridge, they're going to kill the tracks, and the band is going to make sure that they are filling in. They're not, you know, completely dependent on those tracks. And yeah, it, you know, it might sound slightly empty compared to what it was with all the tracks going, but it's not enough to where people notice or people are saying anything. You know, no one out in the crowd is like, whoa, 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 what just happened?
What just happened?
You know, like, no one's doing that. So I think like my encouragement to worship leaders at churches who are using tracks and things like that, I would say it's some conversations you need to have with your team. So whoever's running the tracks, are they comfortable enough and do they have the gear to where if you start going off on something, they can loop it, or do they need to just kill the tracks in that moment? The other thing is that if it's really important to you to have that space in those moments, and maybe the person running the tracks is kind of like, I'm new to multi-tracks, I'm still getting comfortable with this. I don't know if I could loop it. I don't know if I could kill it. You know, I don't know. Like, make a plan. Like, actually make the space. Like, okay, this is going to be our song. We'll do the song, and then right here, we're going to make space for something spontaneous. And to at least try something. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It doesn't mean that it's not spontaneous worship because you intentionally put space for that. I think that's really actually awesome to do that, especially if you're still trying to get comfortable in that. So we do that all the time. Like and not all of our songs on a Sunday morning will have tracks. Like, I think if all of them had tracks, I might lose my mind just a little bit, to be honest. Like, because they can feel restrictive because of that. Yeah. We either just kill it when we go off into something else, or we make a plan, you know, and everyone's there and ready for that. Yeah.
I think that's good. I haven't had to play as much with multi-tracks, but there have been a few times when I extended the song, like the tracks ended and we went back to the bridge without the tracks or something like that. And I just told the team, like, this is what I'd like to do. So yeah, that's probably one of the simplest things that you could do is just don't end the song when the tracks end. But right. I want to hear, I'd like to hear from you too, like just talking about preparing to lead worship. Mm-hmm. And I know there's different contexts that we could talk about. Obviously you travel, so sometimes you're on tour and that looks a little different than like a Sunday morning. For me, when I'm, preparing to lead a set, one of the things that I've always loved to do is to just get alone with the Lord and the songs that I'm going to be leading. And I just sing them, before the Lord, just me and Jesus in the house. And of course there's a part of it of like making sure I'm thinking about transitions between songs or like that. But a lot of it's just re-engaging my heart with the Lord and with songs that I've led a bunch of times and also kind of even getting a feel for or asking the Lord to show me, because again, just planning you can be spontaneous, but like actually think about pray about it ahead of time, make a little bit of a plan, which can change of course in the moment. But I think it's good to be intentional and say, all right, Lord, like is there a moment, like a lot of times he'll highlight something for me, or I'll just feel like, you feel that quickening something on maybe on a certain section of a song, and I'll just linger there myself and like flow on it and see what comes out of my spirit. So my heart's prepared, and a lot of times then I feel at least some sense of direction, especially when we're talking about time frames. And I'm like, I have, if I have 25 to 30 minutes on a Sunday morning, I'm not going to be able to flow along on every song, but there will be certain moments. So I'll have two questions for you. How do you prepare to lead worship? And then with that, Kim, when you're traveling and you're like doing a tour and you're like doing the same songs each night, or I'm assuming you do that, like, how do you keep it fresh? You know what I mean? Like, how do you, what do you do?
Yeah. So I'll start by just saying, with time restrictions, I just want to say, I have always believed, and I really fight to keep this in my mind, that God doesn't exist within time like I do, and he's not restrained by time. Exactly. So God can do anything he wants in 2 minutes or 2 days. And so it's easy for me as a worship leader to be like, what? You're only giving me 20 minutes? That's like 2 songs for me. Do you know who I am? Like, it's just, I know it's so easy, to do that, but to recognize, no way. Like, I've seen God do incredible things in a very short time. Yeah. And I think it's just the obedience and the just being ready to go right in, like, being in that place where, I don't need a certain amount of songs to like get me there. I don't need to go through some sort of like song process, like start with my praise songs and work into my whatever to like get me in that headspace. Like, I am fighting throughout my week to stay in that headspace, to not ever leave that headspace. And it's interesting, before I got married and had kids, I had a lot of time on my hands. I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now. If I knew the schedule ahead of time, so I know like, I'm leading worship in 2 weeks at church. So I'm thinking about my songs. I'm practicing them. I'm praying. I'm asking God, like, what is it that you want to do that Sunday when I'm leading? How can I partner with you, God? All of those things. And it was actually really incredible. That was how I prepared. I was just preparing way in advance and just really pressing in to ask God. And then I got married and had kids, and now it's like, I feel like I feel really blessed if I get 5 minutes in my day of just talking to Jesus, like by myself without interruption. And I've had to change my perspective and remind myself again with the same thing I just said with the time constraints. Kim, if all you have today is 5 minutes with Jesus, that's enough for him, and he can do incredible things in that time if you can just lean in and press into him. And some days I get more and some days I get less. I mean, small children are very demanding on time. They don't always understand when you say, hey, I need a break or whatever, And I recognize that this is a season I'm in. It won't always be like this, but this is the season I'm in right now. And my husband taught me something really, really beautiful. And my husband does this really well. He said, if you imagine it like there's a doorway and the presence of God is on the other side of this doorway and the door's open and you want to stand in that doorway so that if he even whispers, he instantly has your attention. You hear him. Mm-hmm. But the moment life and stress and everything else becomes like all consuming or more important or whatever, it starts piling up and pushing you farther and farther away from that doorway, getting in between you and him. Right. And the fight is to stay in that doorway so that at any moment in my day, he can speak, he can whisper, and I hear him. And the beautiful thing is, if you can train yourself to live in that place, you will hear him. He will speak. You will have beautiful moments in the middle of chaos and busyness and changing diapers and the craziness of your life, whatever that may look like. Right. And I love, like, I cherish those moments. Now it's like I might be like rushing around the house, trying to pack up a diaper bag, trying to change someone's clothes because they just spilled dinner all over it. We're just trying to get there on time because I got to lead worship for some event or whatever it is. And does anyone know where the whatever is? And suddenly in a moment, like I'll just hear God speak something or just drop something on my heart. In the middle of craziness, there's just that still small voice that's just suddenly there. And I go, that's it. And that's what you want to do tonight. And that's what I'm going after. And I feel this like supercharge of excitement and anticipation of what God is about to do. And I show up and I feel ready. Like, it's not the same as what it used to be, but it's enough because he still meets me. You know, is this making sense? Totally. So it's different. And on tours, you know, I don't want this to sound like I do this perfectly. I don't do this perfectly, but I do want to say, on tours, like things like that, when you're doing the same songs day in and day out, I honestly do not tire of that. And it's because I have conditioned myself to remember that it is a different group of people every night, and they have different needs, and they're coming from all different places and different backgrounds, and God wants to meet every single one of them. And God is someone who meets us right where we are. And if we want to, I think about this in my own relationships. I want to be like Jesus. So I want to meet people where they are. So that means that I'm trying to pay attention to that. I'm trying to pay attention to where they're at and what they're feeling and what's going on in their life. Yeah. And so I know that while I might be going through the same set every night, it's not the same every night because he's God and he's meeting people where they are, and it's different people. And the songs are important. I love songs and people should be writing songs. But they are not the most important thing. He is. And what he does in us is the most important things. And songs are our tools and our vehicles to help get us there, help connect us, help us in those moments. But they are not the end all. Even the most amazing top of the chart songs, that is not the end all. He is. He is the all in all. Yeah. And the song, as amazing as it is, on the tour or whatever it was, the awesome lights, the awesome vocals, the whatever it is, none of those things compare to him showing up and encountering people and changing their lives in that moment. So I'm pressing into that. I'm leaning into that. And because I'm so aware of that, I don't even think about it. I don't even think about the fact that I'm doing the same song over and over and over again for like 4 weeks. I don't know. I don't entertain that thought because I'm so anticipating what he's going to do with the people. Right. And that is like my focus.
I think that's a key, what you just said, Kim. Like, you're anticipating, you're expecting, what he's going to do each night with different people. Yeah. That's so good.
I'm moving because the sun was coming in and my computer is like getting hot.
Oh, no. Well,
what happens when you sit outside in California where it's burning up. There we go. Okay.
Cool. Well, let's talk. We've got time goes by so fast.
Yeah, it does.
Let's talk about, I wanted to talk about two things. First, your new single that came out. I think, was it in April that Just Be came out?
Yeah, it came out in April. Yeah.
Can you maybe just quickly share the story behind the song, and then maybe a little bit about the songwriting process, like how you wrote it or co-wrote it or whatever?
Yeah. That song, so in February, Jesus Culture, all of us out here, we set up what we call songwriting camp at least once a year and have a whole bunch of songwriters come out and join us for a week of songwriting. We kind of rotate houses and rotate groups of people and just spend the whole week every day, all day songwriting with different people. And so I had a day with my friends Mia and Jonathan, and Mia and Jonathan brought this, part of the song and of Just Be. They had a part of it already, and they're like, well, we have this thing we've been working on. What do you think? And they they sang it for me, and I loved it. And I was like, yes, let's do that. So we worked on that together, and the song came like really easily. But it was funny because, you know, there's just times and moments when I feel like there's a song that will come that it felt so personal to me and for where I'm at in my life. And the season that I find myself in right now with God is I feel God speaking that to me. Everything else can wait. Just be in my presence. One of the things I feel like the Lord keeps speaking to me is saying, Kim, just settle it in your heart. Just to be vulnerable. This year I'm not traveling as much. So I did 5 tours last year. It's a really busy year. And I could see in my family with my kids, like, okay, everyone did great, but we're all ready to be home. And so I cleaned out my schedule. I don't have a ton happening this year. I'm home a lot. Mm-hmm. I always get a little antsy at home, a little like, oh, I'm ready to get back out there. And like, am I missing out? I want to be out there. Or I just wrestle more when I'm at home. And the thoughts of like, oh, homeschooling, like, I said it earlier, you know, we just finished up. We'll be starting again in September. Man, all of that has been hard and scary for me. And I felt like the Lord just saying to me, Kim, you're a homeschool mom. Settle it in your heart. Kim, you're at home this year. Settle it in your heart. And it's been really, really good for me. The Lord knows what we need, even when we don't, you know? Right. So it was funny because we just wrote this song in February. And then I was talking with one of our friends with Capital, who is our label partner. And he was like, Kim, we'd love to help promote your book in any way. And, you know, are there any songs that you have that you feel like maybe we could just put out a single to kind of correspond with the book, like that maybe goes with the themes of the book? And Just Be popped in my head. And I was like, well, I literally just wrote this song, and I think it goes with the book perfectly. So maybe we could do that. And he's like, looking at the timeline, he's like, we literally have to go in, like, you have to go in this week and record it. It has to happen right now to get it out on time. Mm-hmm. And everything just happened. Like, it happened so fast. Our producer, Jeremy Edwardson, who's amazing, he made it happen like that. And we were able to get it out in time to correspond with the book. And it's honestly, it's been like one of my favorite songs to lead and to sing recently, because it's the message of that song means so much to me and is very much the season that I'm in personally. So.
Wow, that's incredible. So you mentioned the book. Let's talk about the book. Like, yeah. First of all, did you know that did you know you wanted to write a book? Was this something that just like, what happened with that?
Well, I had like thought about it years and years ago, but honestly, when I thought about writing a book, I actually wanted to write a book about leadership, particularly for women. I just really have this thing burning in me to help women grow in leadership and be healthy, strong leaders. And anyways, I had that in me. So I was thinking about that. And then I started talking to a book agent, and she said, you know, I think people really want to know your story and your background. Like, let's do that first. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, okay. And I started thinking about it. I realized, you know, I'd never actually shared my story publicly. And it's always felt a little bit complicated because there's a lot there, and my story is intertwined with a lot of other people's stories. And I think for a long time, I was still kind of going through a lot of healing. And so before I had my first son, I actually sat down and was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell my story. I've never told it publicly before. So I'm going to share my story. And it'd be interesting every now and then at, you know, Q&As or whatever, someone might ask a little bit about my background, and people would always be shocked to know that I wasn't always a Christian or raised Christian or wasn't like a worship leader in youth group at age 10 or whatever, you know, like they're always a little bit surprised by that. And so I started to write my story, and then I got pregnant and had my first son, and that turned my world upside down in a great way. So I set that aside, and then I picked it back up, and then lo and behold, I got pregnant again. And so I set it aside, and then I had through like a really crazy time. I had really bad postpartum after my second son. My third stepdad, who is dad to me, he passed away, and we moved. We planted a church. It was just all these big things happening in my life. So I just set everything aside at that moment. And then I was like, I'm ready to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to write this book. And I started writing again and got pregnant again, baby number 3. So set it aside. But after I had her, I went and signed a contract, and that gave me a deadline. And I needed that. And that kicked my booty into gear and got the book done. I didn't think that, like I said, when I thought about writing, I really wanted to write about leadership, and that will come someday. But it was really good for me actually to tell my story, because like I said, I'd never done that before. So, yeah. So
can you? I want to encourage, whether you're a worship leader or not, I would encourage you to get Kim's book. I mean, it's available on Amazon and stuff too. I believe, everywhere. Yeah, and I know that there's themes interwoven throughout the book of redemption, and even kind of like, I guess it's like almost like a subtitle of the book is "Let God's Love Rewrite Your Story." And I think anyone who finds themselves struggling with the pain of your past, this would be such an encouraging and helpful book for them. So what?
Oh, sorry, that scared me. I sat up by the air conditioner. It just came on. I was like, okay.
That was awesome. I just killed the mood. Just never mind. That's funny. But so just the themes that are in this book are, of healing, that you were talking about inner healing earlier, which, it's interesting, Kim, because I've learned, I'm in my 40s now. So I've had time to learn some things about, I think that the Lord's continuing to heal us. You come to a point in your journey and there's something that maybe the Lord highlights, and I go, oh, yes, I need to be healed in that area. And then I let him do that. And then we go a little further, and there's always healing that's happening. He's so gracious with us and so patient, it's just like the right moment, to touch us in those places. So something that you said about in the description of the book, it had to do about exchanging your perspective for God's perspective.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
That was a really big thing. It still is, I feel like that's kind of a theme in my own life and my own walk with God, is just allowing him to shift my perspective and to just see things differently. And sometimes that's all we need. Sometimes we're like walking through something and we're kicking ourselves or beating ourselves up, or we're holding on to anger or frustration, or why am I going around this mountain again? And sometimes we just need a fresh perspective. Sometimes we just need to allow God to allow us to help us see it differently and see what he's doing in that, and you're right. It is a continuous thing, healing and allowing God to transform you from the inside out. And I think if we will surrender to that and allow him to do that, it's good for us every single time. And like you said, his timing is perfect in that.
Right. So as you've journeyed through healing in your own life, have you found the more you receive healing from the Lord and those places in your heart, does it change the way you lead worship? Does it change how you relate?
Absolutely. Well, it changes me. And so it definitely affects who I am as a worship leader. Yeah. But what I've learned is that your private victories become corporate victories. The things that you fight for in the secret place with God and gain victory in and breakthrough over, you now carry an authority in that, and you get to help lead others into that. And so the more freedom that, what worship leader, any kind of leader, the more freedom that you will fight for, the more victory in your own walk with Jesus. I feel like you have more breakthrough to extend to others that you are leading, to help them come into that and to help them get free and to help leading us. Like I said earlier, it's hard to lead people into an encounter with God if you yourself are not familiar with that. So it's the same way in our own lives with everything that we're fighting for breakthrough and contending for in our own lives. So I've definitely seen the fruit of that in my life, that my personal battles and things that I gain victory in can become corporate victories when I'm leading worship.
Yeah, that is so good. I love the way you said that. It's so true. And the enemy hates it. He hates it when we get, when we get healed or allow the Lord to restore our hearts, or we experience more freedom in an area of our lives, because now we carry an authority to help others overcome, to help others receive breakthrough, and now we're dangerous in a new way that we weren't.
Yeah, right.
I think that's beautiful, and I've experienced some of that in my own walk as well, and it's incredible, like how the Lord, I just love how he doesn't waste anything. Like he doesn't ever waste anything in our journey. He always gets glory. He always gets glory. It's so good.
Yep.
Well, I was wondering, I usually ask our guests if they wouldn't mind to just pray before we close out, if you wouldn't mind praying for the people who are watching and people who will be watching, whatever is on your heart for just a couple minutes. Before we go, is there anything so what's next for you? Are you planning on writing that next book in a few years? Are you going on to go on tour next year? Are you going to keep homeschooling? Are you going to keep?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to keep homeschooling. That is definitely the plan.
Give you another deadline. Should we get two more deadlines?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, as far as writing and books, I'm so a person that I do not push into anything. I just wait for God. I wait for him to open the door and make it real clear. You're supposed to walk through this. And so I'm a dreamer and a visionary. That's one of my strengths. So I will dream and have vision all day long. But when it comes to actually walking into stuff, I wait till he's like made it real clear. It's time to move, and this is direction you go. So, it's interesting because, we've got things going on this year with Jesus Culture. We've got a conference in Chicago and a conference at home here in Sacramento, both of which are important to me. The Chicago one I'm really excited about because it's the first time that we've been back to Chicago since we did our Awakening conference years ago. And that conference was so special. And it was, I still to this day meet people. I just met people recently. They said, we were at the conference in Chicago. It changed our lives. There was just something really special that happened there. And I've just heard testimony after testimony after testimony of people who were there and had something significant God did in their lives while they were there. So it feels really special and exciting to be going back to Chicago, to be doing a conference there again. And I'm just excited for what God's going to do with that. So that's next month, July, actually. Really excited about that. But otherwise, I'm just at home with my kids and have my few things going on this year and just kind of waiting for God. I have lots of ideas and thoughts in my head about what I want to do next year, and we'll be recording still and things like that. But it's that thing again. Like I said, I just feel him just saying, just settle it, just be. So that's what I'm doing right now.
And you're raising up a worship tribe right there.
Yes.
Your own family.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna let you pray for us for a moment or two, whatever you're feeling.
Yeah. And actually, just where you're saying this, I was just thinking, before I pray, I'm just gonna share a quick little story. It just kind of popped in my head as I was saying that about this upcoming year. I know there could be other parents watching this, people with especially little kids like me, and I know how restrictive that can feel sometimes, especially if you've got big dreams in your heart and things that you want to do, or maybe maybe you don't have kids and you just have those big dreams in your heart and you're kind of waiting and wondering when is God going to do this, when is God going to open the doors. And I just kind of want to speak to that a little bit, but God's timing is perfect. And I've had so many moments in my life when opportunities were presented and doors were opened and they looked amazing. And it was like the best thing ever. Sometimes it just looked like this is it. And I could feel in my heart that it just wasn't the right time. It just wasn't right. It looked good, but it just wasn't the right time. And what I've recognized and learned with God is that, He's always in that. And when we wait for him and walk in obedience, and his timing truly is perfect every single time. And we might fear that we're missing out, or fear that we're going to be behind somehow, or forgotten about, or whatever it is. And none of those things are true. I think those are all lies that the enemy tries to speak to keep us just living in a place of fear and trying to get ahead of what God has for us. And there's this time many, many years ago. This is before I was leading worship consistently, before I made any albums, before all of that. My friends had entered me in this singing competition, and it's kind of a long story, but one of the guys that was in the singing competition with me, he had a little band, and they would perform at different, restaurants, casinos, all these like random places. And he got this gig doing music for some sort of like BMX event or something that was happening in a nearby town. And he called me up and he wanted me to come and sing with him. We had competed on this show together, and he wanted me to come and join him for this thing and sing with him. And I was kind of like, okay, first of all, I have no interest, no offense to anyone, but in singing at a BMX event. And I'm like, and I'm pretty sure that the BMXers don't want to be listening to me. Like, I'm not that style of music that they would listen to. Anyway, I told him no, and he got angry, and he yelled. It's like funny now, but he yelled on the phone, "You will never get a better opportunity than this." And I just started laughing on the phone, and I said, "Really? Like really?" And he doesn't know God. But in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, he doesn't know God. God is so big. God is so big. And I told him, I said, my God is so big. And I'm a life that's surrendered to him. And I know that in the right time, he can open the door and stick me exactly where he wants me. And if he wants to keep me back, he can do that too. Whatever he has planned for me. And what I've learned is that there are seasons like now. Seasons when he says, hey, be home, just hang out with me. And seasons when he's like catapulting you out there and you're like, I'm living my dream, and how did this happen? And all of those seasons are important, and all of those seasons matter. They're even the hard seasons, the rough seasons, the desert seasons. It all matters. Like you said earlier, there's nothing that goes to waste with him. Mm-hmm. So I think I just want to encourage people who are watching, who are maybe feeling the frustration of, I have big dreams and I'm not walking in those. Or maybe you're a mom like me and you're at home with your kids and you're like, I'm stuck here, or whatever it is. Yeah. God sees you, and his timing is perfect. And I do believe that putting our kids first, you'll never go wrong with that, right. Obviously. But it doesn't mean that there aren't things that aren't happening. God is still doing something inside of you. He still meets us where we are, here at home, at work, at school, wherever you are. Mm-hmm. So I just want to speak. I'll pray. God, thanks so much for every person that is watching this right now, or going to be watching this. And God, I just ask that as they're watching, as they're listening right now, as we're praying, that your presence would come and just fill the space where they are, wherever they're at, that they would just feel your presence right now, that they'd feel you surrounding them, that they would feel your peace, God, just settling on to their minds, settling on to their hearts, that there'd just be a calm that would come and surround them right now. And God, I just ask that you would just bring a peace to just settle, like you've been speaking to me, settle those things in our hearts, that we are lives that are surrendered to you. Mm-hmm. And you're a good father who takes good care of his children. You take the best care of your children, your sons and your daughters. Your timing is perfect. The ways that you lead us are perfect. The ways that you teach us are perfect. The doors that you open in the perfect time. The doors that you shut are shut, protecting us, God. And God, I just ask that that you would just show up and meet us in surprising ways, God, for the moms and dads at home, maybe feeling the frustrating moments of things aren't moving at the pace they want, or wondering when certain things might happen or change. Lord, I just ask that there would be surprises and special gifts along the way, God, where you would just show up and do something incredible in those short moments, those sweet moments. God, for those of us who are wrestling through seasons and going, when is the time? When will I be released? When will that dream come true? God, I just ask that you will just give us the peace to continue to walk out faithfulness and continue to trust you in your timing, continue to trust you, that you are preparing something inside of us. You are preparing us for what's ahead. And God, I just ask that there just be a special blessing on every person that's listening and watching this, God, that you would just increase your presence. More songs, God. We need more songs. We need more lyrics. We need more sound and more melodies, and we need more leaders, God. I ask that you just continue to raise us up and continue to transform us from the inside out and make us more like you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I felt that. That was good.
Good.
And I'm excited when you were talking about, the desire that you have to write a book on leadership for women, especially. Like, I feel that so strong. Like, I know that's coming.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Awesome. We really appreciate you being with us tonight. This has been a really good time with you, Kim. Thank you very much for sharing some
thanks for having me.
Just really awesome. Have fun with your kids and your chickens. And I wish you would have seen your chickens. I was so hoping.
I know. I was waiting. They kind of walked up earlier, but then they turned around, went back the other way. So
well, maybe another time.
Next time.
All right, everybody who's watching, thank you for joining us. Make sure you check in with us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the things. Our next Spirit and Truth webinar is July 2nd, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you then. And Kim, we love you, and we hope to see you again soon. Have a good night.
Thanks.
All right. Take care, everybody.